He was at our financial meeting before this meeting and was indicated that he was battling a cold and he evidently lost the battle. He left the meeting, and that's too bad. Dennis has been around for a long time, as has Jill, with perhaps, I haven't done the historical research, but she may have a record for the most consecutive years of tenure on our board. So I will present Jill with this little trinket, not that one. And congratulations, Jill. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. It is not a bell.
It is not.
It has a little more substance than that. And as I understand it, we are going to have a mild reception after the meeting tonight for anybody who wants to hang around and partake of some refreshments. So once again, thanks to both Dennis and Jill, and it's too bad that Dennis wasn't here. All right, I would entertain a motion to approve today's agenda.
So moved.
Kate, been moved by Kim, seconded by Angie. Any discussion or questions on that? I might point out, and it perhaps relates to Jill, because we did remove one of the consent items, the one that has to do with the substitute teacher pay, since both of us are are potential substitute teachers. And now we won't have to recuse ourselves from the entire consent item package, because that will be dealt with separately. All right, any other questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion to approve the consent items signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
I think we just did the agenda motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, absolutely. Approval for the agenda was what we just voted on, and so we don't need to vote again. Now the consent items.
I'll move to approve the consent items.
Okay, been moved by Kim. I'll second it. Seconded by Bruce. Any questions, comments about any of those items? Hearing none, we will vote on that item. All those in favor of approving the consent items signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Reports. Mr. Superintendent Wagner.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair, directors, student representatives, community, students. It's been an amazing opportunity as we move into December, moving forward with tonight's report. There's a lot of excitement. But I want to ground us in our mission to ensure individual academic, social, emotional growth that leads to engaged citizens and lifelong learners, keeping that at the center of as we continue our focus this evening. As we think about it, moving into December and the end of 2023 or 2022, I've had trouble with that all day today. It's important for us to reflect on the end of the semester and where we're at, just discussing with the students of their finals and thinking about their calculus finals and some others coming up, and know that there's been many accomplishments in this 6-month period since I've had the humble enough to take the leadership of superintendent starting in July. Those accomplishments have watched the students grow, the accomplishments of the sporting events to the activities to the Beauty and the Beast, getting out in the community to the Wind Down Wednesday, many, many opportunities. And the excitement is, as we vision forward, we can't lose sight on the gifts, and those gifts are the brilliance of our students that are in our buildings. So I want to acknowledge that and say it's a true blessing sitting here in December and humbling being 6 months in as a superintendent. Visioning forward, the great excitement moving into 2023 will be our strategic planning and our visioning, with sadness of the outgoing board members, but the excitement of onboarding our new board members. So there's sadness and there's mixed emotions as we move into the closing of this year. I do want to personally thank the directors as tonight ends for them and invite us for the reception. It's been an amazing opportunity to serve with you. I know the many years that you've served on the board, you've set a strong foundation for the excellence in Albert Lea Schools. So thank you for that. Thinking about coming back in January, and I know that creates some anxiety for some because we're not even through winter break, but there'll be some professional development on January 3rd and 4th for our schools before the students return. So that Tuesday and Wednesday, the staff will be moving and continuing to focus on our goals of our HRS, our high reliability schools, and really moving into that phase 2. Though you'll see some collaborative teamwork as well. So the level 2 and the MTSS work will continue. You'll see that also that the continuation of the science, the Sibley and Lakeview, Halverson and Hawthorne have gone through the literacy training and the writing. So now Sibley and Lakeview will lean into that and take the lead from Hawthorne and Halverson. And then you will see also some trauma-informed training that will take place at the secondary levels as well. So just kind of foreshadow what will be coming up as we return in January. I do want to acknowledge our robotics team. Congratulations to the Albert Lea Robotics. They've been in the broken zip ties are their names, and they just had some amazing success from some of the recent competition to the current Minnesota VAX records that they hold. The broken zip tie holds the record in Minnesota for the most points scored at 226, as well as receiving the 6 awards with a team from Mankato area schools. So the hope is we will acknowledge them at our next study session. So congratulations to them as well as our Coach Burke, who has been very excited over the weekend to support the team. So they represent Albert Lea very well. And finally, as we move into winter break, just wishing all students, staff, and families all the best during this summer winter break, as well as the holiday season. Knowing that weather is coming before us, the good news after last day on Wednesday, I would hope, but then Thursday with no students, really focusing on taking care of you and enjoying your family and really recentering yourself as we move into 2023. And that's my report. Thank you.
Begin with our illustrious student representatives.
Microphone. There it goes. Well, we just had holidays, which sounds really silly to say out loud in such an important place, but it was just like a sort of getting together and just celebrating like this season and stuff like that. And we had like dress up days, and then Friday was a half day with like dodgeball tournament. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like the concessions were open and stuff like that.
Yeah, and then Saturday night there was a movie in the gym, and I wasn't able to go to that, but it sounds like it went really well. It sounds like it was really fun. Obviously, this week is finals week, so we are a little stressed out, but excited for winter break.
Yeah, and we've also seen, at least like just in our like age groups, an increased involvement in like sports and activities. Like the team sizes are growing, which is very good. Even like we've a lot of younger involvement too, especially, so that's really good.
Yep, and then our winter choir concert was last Monday, and then tonight is the winter band and orchestra concert.
So yeah, just busy times at the high school.
Thank you. Angie.
All right. Before this meeting, I attended the Finance Committee meeting where we went over the audit report, and I'll leave that to Jennifer to cover later in the meeting tonight. Otherwise, I was able to tour the high school last week for a couple hours. That was pretty fun. Did see Ron out there, spent quite a bit of time with Principal Dibble and one of the new assistant principals, Christy Kennis. I did see one of the dress-up days. I think it was Dress Like You Love Winter or You Hate Winter.
Oh, yeah. Patty did a very good one.
So there were some kids wearing summer clothes. But no, it was a great experience. I thought that was very beneficial to be there and see what the environment is like and meet people. And I would love to do that at any other school that would have me to. So thank you.
Thank you. I was not able to attend the toy committee, but I bet Bruce has an update for us. I did attend the Education Foundation meeting. The Education Foundation is doing some really exciting things. We had strategic planning, so the developments from that, I'm excited to share with the community as it progresses. We also have committed as an Education Foundation to support the Promise Scholarship, which the community will start to hear more about, but that's another step in the right direction to support education in Albert Lea. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Kim.
Just
Thank you. And I'll wait for the camera. There we go. Since it's my final board meeting, would it be okay if I give an address? Thank you. Tonight is the final scheduled board meeting of my tenure. When I was first elected to District 241 School Board in 2006, my children were in 6th and 8th grades. I was a parent and involved community member who had witnessed areas of strength and growth for the district, and I wanted to help. Over these 16 years, I have been a voice for government transparency and for those who had no voice or were afraid to use it. As an elected school board official, I have seen the board remove itself from authority and acquiesce to a role of submission. For me, as an elected official, asking questions and expressing a minority opinion drew fire. In serving as an elected official, it seemed I have had less rights than an average citizen. I've been lied about, rumors spread about, stonewalled, threatened, and attacked in closed session and open session. Is that kind of behavior acceptable in our government? In this country, people are free to choose whether they will participate in an action or not. In this district, choices have been made. I have witnessed what I believe to be unethical and illegal behavior. Serving as your elected school board member over the past 16 years has cost me greatly. It has cost my family greatly. However, I would do it all again because it had to be done. I am hopeful for the future of the district with Superintendent Wagner and Chair Score in their positions. It behooves the new board to move toward a place of respect for all voices and toward transparency and accountability for what has transpired in the district. I know that thought scares some individuals, but I fully believe that in the end, the truth will be known. I am very excited about the next part of my life's journey, and am always available to anyone wishing to contact me. Your expressions of appreciation to me have been overwhelming throughout the years, and my deepest gratitude to those who have supported me over the past 16 years, and especially my husband and family. Thank you.
Thank you for your thoughts, Jill. Bruce. And thank you for your service.
Thank you.
I attended the Teacher of the Year committee meeting. Our next meeting is not our next meeting. The kickoff is January 3rd in all the buildings. So nominations will be accepted after that time, and then April 5th is the reception at the high school commons at 3:45.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. That leaves me. It's been a busy half a month. As always, I attended along with Ron and Jen a kind of what do you a virtual meeting that didn't work out perfectly because my sound didn't. I was seen but not heard. But that's what the Elberly Austin Special Education Consortium, which I've been connected with for quite some time now, and it's a very well-oiled enterprise, and I'm impressed with the staff there. This time I was impressed because the person in charge of that building couldn't be there to do a report because they had to be present at something that was going on in the building, and so they're doing a lot of very necessary and good and hard work. Also attended in connection with the Education Foundation, the Athletic Hall of Fame program, which is underway now, and the date has been set, July 27th, I believe, at the Cove. Will be the biennial program where we will recognize the, athletes and coaches who have excelled over the years. Typically, there are 8 awardees with our Distinguished Educator and Distinguished Alumni program. We recognize 4 in each of those categories, but then we do it every year. This is every 2 years, so they recognize 8. Gets to be more than that sometimes because in activities where you have relay teams, 1 awardee turns out to be 4. So that's that's in the works. Looking forward to that. And finally, for my report, excuse me, I will read the superintendent evaluation summary, which the board agreed to this summary at a closed session after or during our last get-together. And the areas evaluated for Superintendent Wagner were 2 standards and some elements under each of those. Standard 3, communication and community relationships. Typically, we would deal with 2 elements, but there was a tie for a couple of them, so we did 3. Engagement informs the community as a whole, and visibility and approachability for communication and community relationships. Then Standard 7, student support, 2 elements, support for student and school safety and security. And here is the conclusion that the board reached after evaluating the input that the board provided. The board provided very positive feedback in all 5 of the areas mentioned above with a very high rating. The highest ratings were in element 3F, which is visibility and approachability, where Superintendent Wagner was repeatedly referred to as very visible and approachable. The next highest rating was in element 3B, engagement. Superintendent Wagner was here described as being very available to the community for input, using information as best he can at this time. These are quotes that I'm reading from some of the responses that board members presented. Responses regarding element 3C, informs the community as a whole, were also generally very positive, especially where communications with the general public was concerned. Some board members felt that at times communication with the board could have been better. The last 2 elements were in regard to student support. Element 7C, support for students, is an area where Superintendent Wagner was most frequently described as, quote, effective rather than highly effective. The impression created by the board's comments seemed to be that the board is excited about the steps that the superintendent has made, but it is too early to measure the results of those steps. The responses were very similar for element 7F, school safety and security. Again, most of the board members described Superintendent Wagner's as effective rather than highly effective. And again, all of the comments were positive, identifying the superintendent as one who is, and I quote, starting to implement plans for safe and welcoming schools, unquote. The overall impression based on the evaluation of board members is that Superintendent Wagner has made a very good start in the areas measured, and with his continued diligence and the help of all vested parties, we may arrive at a good conclusion. And that is the evaluation of our superintendent, which will be placed in his file and is now a matter of public record. Okay, next we move to...
Teacher sitting over there.
Oh, I'm sorry. What you...
Kathy's over there giving me time.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry about that.
Usually they're at the table.
My name's Diane Henry, and I'm a teacher at Albert Lee High School. I'm here on behalf of the ALEA today. So I just want to give a report on some of our buildings. As the girls mentioned, we had a holidays festival at the school, which was in response to a food drive that we had where we collected over 4 tons of food, correct, through the student council? Yeah, so that was really exciting. One of the new things that we've started at the high school this year is our advisory programs that we call Flex, and we kind of incited some friendly competition among groups, and that really helped get engagement across the board. And so that was really fun to see and get all our school kind of together in that way. We also, at the ALC, the MAP Stars raised over $800 this month. They used that money to buy gifts for an anonymous family. What they did was have a penny war between their classrooms where they were collecting pennies, dollars, silver money. I don't know all the rules with it, but the students had a lot of fun competing there too, and so they were able to, the MAP Stars took time out of their school day last Thursday to shop for gifts and wrap them for that family. So, and then in the K-5, students have celebrated Computer Science Education Week by participating in coding and programming activities in their media lessons this month. And Southwest is very excited to have their gym back. And yeah, they had their first assembly. They had some competitions, and they're having a dress-up week this week to celebrate the end of the school year. And I believe they're having a holiday concert, or they did have a holiday concert as well. So, yeah, good things happening, but everybody's ready for break, I think. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Too busy trying to get this mic to go. Okay, number 9, I believe. Curriculum and instruction. We have an action item, Kathy Niebuhr, concerning substitute teacher pay.
Yes, thank you. We would like to add an additional pay rate for substitute guest teachers for teachers who've maintained their content area standard license. So they maintain their Tier 4 license. They maintain the 125 hours of professional development to renew that license. And similar to what we did with our custodians, support staff, and paraeducators, paying them at the lowest rate of pay on their collective bargaining agreement, we'd like to pay the lowest rate of pay for teachers who maintain these licensures to earn that rate of pay, which is $31.58 an hour. We also, these are the teachers we need to fill our long-term sub positions, and they do get a higher rate of pay for that, but we'd like to keep them in the schools on our daily subs. We are still running short of subs on a daily basis, so would like to encourage these teachers, many of whom are retired, to keep that license active and reward them accordingly, similar to our other bargaining units.
Do you think this will help with some pool?
I hope so. I've talked with a couple of retired teachers, and I know Mary Jo has as well. I know some have contacted board members and have expressed concerns as well. So we've had some really good conversations with them.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve, and then we can ask for this question?
I'll move to approve.
Moved by Kim.
I'll
seconded by Bruce. Now, any other questions relative to this?
I think it provides a good separation between those substitute teachers that may not have that licensure to just show that we value all of our subs, but we value those subs that continue that licensure.
Any other questions?
One other one. Is it now, when they maintain their licensure in this level, does that only apply for their pay when they're teaching in that specific subject area? I.e., if I'm an elementary teacher, maintain my license in elementary, and I teach in elementary, they receive that pay, but if I teach in the high school, let's say science, it's a different rate?
No, it would be the same rate of pay on the daily rate, but if they took an LTR, a long-term replacement, they would be eligible to get an out-of-field permission, whereas our short call subs are not. So they do provide us the advantage that even though they're not licensed in that area, we can get an OFP for them. And they must have a Tier 3 or 4 license to do that.
I have a question too. How about if in the remote eventuality that someone is still alive who has a life license, how does this affect them?
Well, that's a good question, Mr. Score. That would, I would assume, because that life license is a Tier 4 license, that would be on Tier 2. Not that that's you, but just in case.
I'm sure those people will be relieved to hear that. Any other questions? All right, it has been moved and seconded that we accept this proposal. All those, and I think Jill and I will probably not vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That would be 4-0 then, right? 4-0. Yeah. All right. Next, presenter Kathy, our Superintendent Wagner, I'm sorry, the school calendar for the next 2 years.
Thank you, Chair. Directors and student representatives and community. December 6th, we presented 2 draft calendars for 23-24, 24-25. I want to bring us back to what we stated in the decisions and the focus areas, what's for students first, then staff, then community. I did meet with, again last week, with the Superintendent Student Leadership Cabinet and brought the topic up again just to hear additional thoughts, and it was still reinforced specifically around ending the semester before winter break. You heard from our student representatives this week of finals that it is a hectic week, but leaning into winter break, it relieves that anxiety. And then they also reiterated the fact that, in May, having the opportunity to first opportunity in employment and any other opportunities that lie beyond school, and just that they're cognitively ready for vacation. So it was reinforced through the high school students as well, but the 2 presented calendars tonight really gives that predictability. It gives the community an opportunity to plan. It's in December. It gives the community, had talked about timeliness. It also gives the time for the community to plan for the 2 years. It does have us start before Labor Day on both calendars and ending before June.
All right, in keeping with my usual recommendation that we move on the issue and then discuss it, do I hear a motion to accept this proposal for the 2-year calendar as presented? Moved by Bruce, seconded by Kim. Now, any questions or discussion?
Yes, these were the 2 calendars presented on December 6th.
And as I understand it, there's been some input in some meetings relative to that proposal and nothing changed.
Correct, that is correct. It was, the questions or the input was aligned to where we're at within the parameters of the 2 calendars.
Yeah, there's one other concept in favor of this calendar. It gives our students who are interested in taking high-stakes tests in the spring, a little bit more time to prepare, to have class time to prepare for those tests, like the ACT test. I think we have an advantage over students against whom our students are competing in taking those tests because of that increased time before the test.
Is this on? All right, yep, just a quick comment. And there are some points I appreciate about this calendar. I emailed with Ron a little bit, and to me, it seems a little bit like a somewhat possibly of a compromise between the early start and the after Labor Day start. But my thought here is just that there's a lot of hunger from parents in the community to be heard and feel like they're listened to on this issue. And from my perspective, I think the parents should be the group that has the most weight given on this decision. And because of that, until we would do a parent survey and kind of get a better feel of where people are at, I'm not comfortable voting for any calendar, so I'm voting no, but that's why.
I was on the board when the pre-Labor Day calendar first went into place. And at that point, it did feel like it was a push on the community. It was a pressure without buy-in. And it was geared to have some outcomes that were learning-based and score-based. And I haven't seen those outcomes. I also don't believe there is a huge community buy-in. I know there is some, and I do appreciate that we're coming out early. I do appreciate the consistency. But another fact about that is that we have been able to do this because we have had construction waivers in a certain amount to be able to do that. And so to me, I don't know if that is really a sustainable outlook for the district. And I know we have a lot of work that is going to be done, and maybe that is. But I will not be supporting a pre-Labor Day calendar tonight. Thank you.
Superintendent Wagner, are we still, I'm assuming that we are still in a minority here among schools, but are there other schools that are joining in this process of starting school as we are a little earlier?
Yeah, just to give, thank you for the question, Chair. Just for relevance, last week Rochester Public Schools also adopted to a pre-Labor Day start as well. So that would be the most recent.
Kim.
Yeah, that's what I was going to add, that I had seen that. I also feel like I have a little different perspective on this calendar, really preparing our students for in the career and technical fields. This aligns with many initiatives that happen in that space. Students, I saw firsthand the anxiousness without this calendar not ending before December, their semester ending, and for them to be able to have a clean cut at that break. It really isn't a break for them if they're having to keep up with that piece. And so I can appreciate the parent piece because that's important. But I think students and teachers have to be really our focus on a calendar because it benefits the community as well. And I know that there are people that are concerned. I've heard from very few people this time in favor or not in favor of the calendar. And the only thing I heard was that from one family that it interrupted their vacation schedule, but they appreciate the fact that they're getting 2 years because they can really be intentional about their planning. And so I think the learning piece, that's something that I don't see there's proof the opposite way that doing this hurts the learning. And I think the drive was really that when we know that it's more than a certain amount of time where there's not learning happening, that we're seeing loss. I think that's a bigger conversation for for what we can do in the future. So I'll be in favor of this.
Thank you, Kim. Bruce?
And just a point of clarification, this particular calendar does not have a shorter summer that would address the learning loss over time. They're the same amount of times. Thank you.
Marissa?
I feel like as much as worrying about the parent response, at the end of the day, I feel like this is the lives we live as students. I won't be living through these calendars. You'll live through one of them, but that makes it sound like I'm dying at the end of the year. Jeez, I would not be attending Everett Lee High School through these calendars. But I feel like it is very almost important to have how Superintendent Wagner has been talking to the students, and as much as the parents are an important role, the students are the ones that are living through it specifically. And something I really appreciate that we get to have winter break as an actual break. It's your pause of you're like, okay, now I get to relax for 2 weeks and then I'm back at it. And I think that is very helpful and is very good for our well-being. And I feel like also, what word was it? That's what I was thinking when we were talking about it, is that it's the same schedule as colleges. And it's preparing you for that next step. And if you're already used to a calendar like this, then you're used to it. And it's the whole thing of it was a little bit of a weird jump when we switched calendars. But now this is just how it is. And I don't know, I feel like while the whole before Labor Day sometimes gets some pushback, I don't see why it is such a big deal that it's before Labor Day. I guess we don't really celebrate Labor Day much in my family, but I don't know.
Should be a little concerned about that. Any other comments? And I think I've commented that long ago when I went to college for the first semester, and when the semester was over, that was when the winter break began, and I thought, boy, that's a good idea, and I still think that's a good idea. And I know this is an issue that the public is predictably split on, and I don't know what the split is, but there's an area of disagreement, and I guess I've always been of the opinion that it isn't so important as to what kind of a system you have in place. It's how well you administer the system that you do have in place, and what goes on in the classroom is a whole lot more important than when those class periods take place. And personally, I think that our summer's break is too long. Our calendar is antiquated because we take long summers off because the farm kids have to go home and work on the farm. Well, how many students are in that situation these days? But we're still doing it that way. If I were a supreme dictator, I would have small breaks throughout the year, more teacher contact days total, and no big break where kids forget half of everything they learned, and then they come back in the fall and are expected to perform at the same level that they did when they left in the spring. So anyway, that's a long sermon is over. Any other discussion? All right.
One thing I forgot to mention of also why I feel like our calendar works, Rachel's like, oh my, but is I'm a fall athlete and Rachel is too. We both play tennis, and the thing is we already need to be here for that time period. Like, that is when practices are starting. And having kids already be here, like, not only is helpful for the student athletes, because then their families don't have to be like, oh, but we scheduled vacation for your first week. It's like, oh, no, that's your first week of school. And it's also the whole thing of, like, then people are here, and they're like, oh, wait, maybe I should go try soccer. Like, I don't know. We're always worried about, like, involvement at the high school, so it's just, like, one of those small things.
So I'd like, oh, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you. I'd like to introduce Greg Larson. Greg has been involved in our audit since I've been here. The name of his firm has changed to Feldman and Company, but Greg and his team spent a lot of time with us since September, and he now is going to be going through the executive audit summary with you. He went through the longer publication earlier at the Finance Committee meeting. Right?
You want to sit?
No, I'll
Okay.
just stay back here. I'm
Um,
available.
I asked Jennifer, she wanted me to go through the 88-page report tonight or the 15-page report. She said I get 10 minutes, so you get to do the 15-page report. I don't know if you can hear me okay? Is this on? I'll get started here. So there's a brief letter saying that there's an executive summary here. So I think you have the audit report up. We're going to go do the executive summary. It's a 15-page report. Jennifer said I cannot do the 88-page report. Yeah, so basically, I don't know if you have the executive summary. I guess we may not have the overhead here, but I'll go through the executive summary for the board members that have that. We'll start on page 1 here. So the audit opinion, we looked at that with the executive committee, and that was a 3-page report. Basically, the report is a clean audit report. We feel your statements are fairly stated. That's what you want to hear. Internal control is an internal control letter here. We basically had just one finding on internal control that basically says that we helped you write up the audit report, which is pretty common for a lot of school districts in the state of Minnesota, probably 95% of the districts. We had to do a single audit, and we had no findings. Page 2 is the internal control letter. And that shows that we had the one finding as far as writing up the audit report that we did help the district do. You don't have a CPA on staff to do this, again, so it's pretty common. Page 3 and page 4 is something called the communication with those charged with governance. We've had to do this for quite a few years. Basically, the only thing really new in this letter this year is that we had to implement something called a GASB statement number 87, which you had to recognize leases as a capital asset and liabilities. This is AICPA language in this letter. It says difficulties encountered. It says we encountered no significant difficulties. We didn't have any difficulties. We enjoy working with your staff. Corrected, uncorrected misstatements. I'm not aware of any uncorrected misstatements. Disagreements, not aware of any disagreements. On December 9th, when I went through the draft of the report with Jennifer and one of her staff people, they signed a representation letter saying they didn't forget to tell us anything really important. They're not aware of any fraud or pending litigation. Management consultation with other independent accountants, there's nothing wrong with that. Just that you have a clean opinion, there's no reason for you to check with another audit firm to find that. And other audit findings or issues, when Jennifer calls and asks a question, we just assume she wants the correct answer. We're not trying to guess which way she wants us to answer it, so we can be on good terms with your district. So if she asks us a question, we just want to give it the correct answer. And then other matters is just saying that there's some additional information in the audit report. The executive committee got to see a lot of that other information. We talked about it briefly at that meeting. The next section talks about financial trends of your district. And then when we did it with the executive committee, we said this is a good audit report, and you'll see that in these financial trends. Page 6 shows the general fund, restricted and unrestricted fund balances, and you can see that all categories improved some this year in their fund balance. Unrestricted went up a fair amount. Non-capital restrictions also went up. Operating capital had a small increase, and then the long-term facilities maintenance has had a negative balance, but you're working itself out of the negative. You can see that improved this year, and that was something we talked about the executive committee, that there's a plan in place to get that out of the negative. The next page, 7, shows some information about your unassigned fund balance. And we show that has been pretty steady over the last 5 years. Been up and down a little bit, but right in that same range. So that's basically what you like to do, is be consistent in that fund balance. The district has a target range, I believe, right at 12%, and you're right in that 12 to 13% in that, meeting your goal there. Operating capital fund balance, that one's been up and down as you've had projects with operating capital. The food service balance, we talked about this with the executive committee too. You can see how the fund balances has improved the last 2 years. The 5-letter word, that's not a 4-letter word, it's a 5-letter word called COVID. And the prior year, everybody received free and reduced meals, and the funding for those free and reduced meals is a lot higher than a student paid meal at a regular price. And you can see what's happened the last 2 years. Here, when we looked at the costs, we'll see that the costs have gone up too. Anybody buying groceries knows the food service costs have gone up, just like your food program here. Community service fund balance did drop some this year, but looking at the budget, that was a planned drop. And then the debt service fund had an increase in fund balance this year. On the bottom of page 9, we show the information about your average daily membership, which is an important number for Minnesota school districts. So you can see the number improved a little bit this year from the prior year. Page 10, the top of this page, you probably saw some of this in your tax and truthation report, some of these similar numbers showing where all your revenue comes from in the general fund. A big part comes from state sources. And then the bottom of the report, we're starting to show expenses for your district, general fund, compared to other districts in the state of Minnesota and school districts of similar size. And the one thing I do want to point out that we have numbers for 22 here, but we can't get 22 numbers for all the other districts because they just have 21 numbers. They won't get those numbers in there till about a year from now. So when you look at your 22 numbers, the 21 numbers for the other districts would be more comparable to what you had a year ago. So the administration cost did drop a little bit per student cost this year, so a little bit higher than the districts. Regular instruction, same thing here. It'd be interesting to see the 22 numbers a year from now, because a lot of districts have the same thing. You have a lot of COVID grants and things that's helped supplement some of your costs. And so when we look at 21 costs for other districts and try and compare them to 22, it's not really comparable. But your district has 21 costs were a little bit higher than the statewide numbers and districts of your size. Vocational instruction, again, these costs are higher than the average for districts in the state of Minnesota and similar size. As I mentioned to your executive committee, when I'm working here at the district, I see one of your unique programs I don't see anyplace else is that when I work in the building, I have a group of vocational students that are offering me coffee, and the students are dressed up in a suit and tie. A lot of pride in those students. I think that's a nice program. Special education, another area that your district has been higher than the average in the state of Minnesota, and that's been true for some time. These costs were down a little bit from the year before. Instructional support services, down a little bit this year from the year before. Site buildings and capital expenditures. Again, we're comparing to prior year numbers, but your numbers are a little bit under what the statewide numbers are. And then pupil support services, excluding transportation. Thinking that when you compare this 22 number you have to next year's numbers, I'm guessing all the schools in the state of Minnesota spend more in this area because of all those additional grants. I don't know that for sure yet. We'll see when we see that. Transportation is interesting. Numbers on page 14. We're showing that the 22 numbers went down a little bit from the year before per student. The year before you were a little bit higher than the other districts. I'm not sure where you'll be in line with the 22 numbers for other districts. We know that the gas prices have gone up. It just depends on the number of routes. Food service expenses. The executive committee saw that the food service fund balance went up a big amount this year, but your expenses also went up a big amount this year. You can see how much your expenses went up this year per student, but your fund balance did improve that much. So again, I would like to see what those 22 numbers are for other districts. And then the last page I have on this report is debt service. We're showing cost per student. This one you're below the other districts, both in statewide and districts of your size. So I think I actually did what Jennifer didn't think I could do. I think I kept it close to 10 minutes here. I don't know if there's any questions on anything.
I'd like
Jen.
to, just if I could, Greg, just make a couple comments.
Yeah.
So, we have the 12% fund balance policy, and actually, for this year, when we apply the calculation as stated in our school board policy, we ended up the 21-22 year at a 13.03%. So I'm really proud of the work that the board and my staff and everyone's done to keep our district in a extremely healthy financial position. Well, COVID monies, inflows equal outflows. We can't take in more than we spend. So certainly it has helped. Because there are some things that we're using COVID funds to pay for that maybe in the past we've used other funds. So it certainly has been a benefit to us, yes.
I would like to reiterate a couple things that Greg pointed out. The summary on page 2 of the report that we got, in our opinion, the financial statement referred to above present fairly in all material aspects the respective financial position of the governmental activity, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information of the independent school district number 241 as of June 2022, and the respective changes for financial position for the year then ended in accordance with the accounting principles. In other words, the audit was very favorable.
It was a clean opinion, yeah.
Yeah.
I thank your staff. Jennifer's breaking in a new right-hand person But you still have good staff. That she's training people. We go through the same thing. We lost a couple of 10 and 11-year type employees, so it's always tough when you're breaking in new people. Jennifer takes a lot of pride in her work here, so I do thank her and her staff. She has some training that she did do this year, and she's hoping next year will be a little less strain on her brain. But again, I thank your board and all your staff here. I think the staff are surprised when it's that time of year they start seeing us walk through the hallways again. But thank you.
Yes, Jill.
If we could go back to page 10, please,
Yep.
where those, these kind of graphs started. It took me a minute to kind of get the flow of these. And I just wanted to see if there was a recurring theme. I know in past years, we've always been higher than the average in administration and special ed. And so it appears, if we're looking here, so just for clarification, the red would be schools of our same size.
That's right, yeah.
The light blue is the state average.
Yep.
Those are both for 2021. So if we look at ours there in the dark, we're at 1,211, while other schools our size are at 1091. This is for administration,
Right,
correct?
yeah. You were higher than the average for 21,
Higher.
yeah.
And then if we go to regular instruction, the next one, we're also higher there. We're at 6134. Other size schools are at 5566. Of course, this was last year, and well, this one, I guess we actually went up a little bit more this year, but I know we can't compare to others. And then vocational instruction, we're again above average.
Yep.
We're at 257, and the other schools our size are at 172.
Right, yeah.
Special education, we're at 3846, while other schools our size are at 2453, and there is a small decrease this year. Instructional support, also more. It seems like we're above average in everything except for the pupil support services, excluding transportation and debt service, and then we're tied in food service. Does that sound correct?
You were higher on those first quite a few graphs. In 21 pupil transportation, for whatever reason.
We had the two-tier system in.
Oh, right, yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just a point of information for the board moving forward.
Right, yeah.
We are above. It's been consistent over the years that we are above average in our spending in these areas. Thank you.
Right, yep, you're right.
One of them jumps out at me, Jill, I'm excited about the fact that we spent more on vocational instruction than other. That's an area where I would welcome being ahead of the rest of the average school districts.
Yeah, I agree. When we do have special focuses in our district, we would look to find higher expenditures, but in other areas, I just wonder, about that.
I know there's been discussion over the years with the special education costs, that maybe your criteria for allowing special ed students is maybe at a different level than some other districts. And I'm not a special ed expert. I see a special ed person is here, but that's just the way the district has been, good or bad, there.
It also occurs to me that these are excellent points to ponder in terms of our expenses in these relative areas. But really, what our business here is, our reporting is consistent with what it should be. Our records are audited, and
Right.
the auditor has
The
discovered.
main thing, I guess, I look at is are you able to maintain your fund balances and still do this? Again, I don't know how you did it when you look at every line and you're above average. there, but the fund balance maintained across the board, except for community service fund did drop a little bit this year, but Jennifer kind of reminded the board that you're in the education business. We're not here to make our fund balance keep growing. Accountants tend to be a little bit different. We like to see, if it was up to me, you'd probably have a 30% fund balance. Because I get nervous. I remember the days of this tax shift thing. But Jennifer said that 1.5 months worth of revenue, a fund balance of that kind of number should be sufficient normal times. So that she did remind the executive committee that that's why you have a goal. And she thinks some districts have a higher fund balance, and she doesn't feel that's correct either. But it's just, it has to be what your district decides to have for a goal. And that's what you've had, and you've been able to maintain through this last 5-year period.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I still also want to thank Jennifer and the team as well, the leadership through this. One question came up was, and I think you reinforced it, was the fact that, we want to have a fiscally healthy district, but we also want to ensure our students have and our families have the very best opportunity and experience. So finding that balance as we move forward to look at our investments, align our investments, and measure the, this is a technical term, the return on those investments. And I think that's our priority moving forward, to maintain fiscal health, but also to ensure our students and families are having a positive experience. So that would be the responsibility of the team to move forward in collaboration with the board.
I think it's also prudent to point out that the fund balance is not a measure of extravagance or frugality. And it's a number that reflects what we have decided we comfortably should have on hand in order to meet our expenses, if in fact the legislature decides to postpone as they have done in the past. But we should not be so concerned about what that fund balance is, but rather we should be concerned about whether we're cutting into it, which would be bad for us because we are spending more than we are taking in, or if it's actually growing and we're not making utilization of the money that's available to provide those services for our students. So I think it's very impressive that we have maintained a steady fund balance over the years, at least as far as I've been involved with the board. And I think our management has done a pretty good job of maintaining that level and at the same time providing good services to our patrons. All right, any other discussion, comments?
And one other comment on the pie chart on page 10. So it looks like 10.8% of the budget came from local property taxes.
Right, that would be right.
And then 9.3 from federal sources. So is that 9.3 a little higher than normal due to COVID funding?
9.3 is quite a bit higher than normal, because when we looked at in the 88-page report, I believe your federal programs were over $7 million this year, and I think quite a few years I remember them being between 2 and 3 million, so they're probably about 3 times as what they normally would be. So it is quite a bit higher.
That 11% has remained fairly consistent, that's what the revenue that we receive from our local property tax. Yes, we do need to have this accepted, yes.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This is a yearly action item. It is described, and I believe you have the whole resolution in your board packet. So it's essentially establish combined polling places for certain municipal precincts or multiple precincts.